Today I'm joined by NFL Network reporter James Palmer, who has also covered the Texans for 3 years. James, thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
I feel like I'm a little starstruck here, man. You're the one who's breaking all that J.J. Watt news and getting him before. I said we're all trying to get him, so this is a pleasure for me, man.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for following me. And I know that you've covered the Chiefs over the course of this season. And are you going to be at the Bills versus Chiefs game on Sunday?
I'll be there. I'll be there. I get in there on Friday. I'll be outside Arrowhead doing reports all day on Saturday. I'll be there all pregame Sunday. And again, have the late game. Like last week, I was doing
Yeah.
Steelers Chiefs, and I got to the stadium, I think, at I want to say 7 a.m. Game kicked off at 7 p.m. I was there for a long time before we played some football. But yeah, I'll be there again. I see the Mahomes shirt there. Is that what I see?
Yeah, that's my home shirt. I'm a big fan actually of him.
Yeah. What do you like? What do you like about Pat?
Well, I mean, just what I've seen out of him, the things that he's done, I've pretty much never seen any other quarterback do. Just the way he scrambles outside the pocket, just really extends the plays and the sidearm throws, the jump
Mhm.
passes, all those crazy stuff. I've just never seen really anybody do that. He's also a really great leader, seems to be a really nice guy, does great stuff in the community as well. So, I mean, he's just, he's a champion as well. So he's just such an amazing quarterback right now, which is why I'm
Oh,
a big fan of him.
yeah, you're not alone. I'm a huge fan too. I just watching him and his growth, and we've seen all those plays, right? All those things that we've really maybe never ever seen a quarterback do. I was at the game where he threw it left-handed. We've
Yeah.
seen him throw underhand. We've seen him do pretty much everything, and it's always fun covering the Chiefs because you never know. Maybe the next game he's going to do something again that
Yeah.
we've never seen before. That's been the really fun part about covering Patrick all this time over the last several years, and now we're seeing him get smarter and smarter and smarter, right? And he's figuring things out.
Yeah.
That's a quality that I don't think we talk about enough. How smart he is. So yeah, man, he's a complete package. He is going to be around for a long time, and as of right now, might be on pace to be the greatest ever. We won't say that with Brady still out there, but he's got a shot right now.
Yeah. So really, how close are you to the Chiefs players and the Chiefs organization? I know you've interviewed guys like Travis Kelce, who did him after the wild card game, and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, how's your relationship with all the players on the Chiefs?
Yeah, I have a really good relationship with a lot of guys on the Chiefs. Tyrann Mathieu, probably specifically, maybe him with a better relationship maybe than anybody. But I've just known Tyrann since he was at LSU, and then when he
Mhm.
was with the Texans for a year, and they
Yeah.
wanted him back, and he was a great leader for Houston the year that he was there. I knew him in Arizona, and so probably him. It stems from him, and throughout that locker room. It stinks we're not able to get in the locker room like we
Mhm.
used to these last couple of years. Hopefully we can get back in there. That's where a lot of those, conversations and fun interactions with a lot of these guys take place. But I really like that organization a lot. They treat me great every time I come to Kansas City. Treat me with some great barbecue too, which I'm not going to argue with. But I really do like the organization from top down, from Clark Hunt, their owner, on down. They treat me really well. General Manager Brett Beach is we have a really good relationship, and they always do me right. From Andy Reid too. My dad covered Andy Reid way back in the day, if you believe that, when he was a
Mhm.
sports reporter.
Yeah.
So now I'm covering. Makes Andy feel old, I guess, when we interact with each other. But everybody in that building's great. Andy always runs a real family type of organization, and that's kind of the vibe that you get with the Chiefs. It's kind of a family business, which makes it kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs, I'm definitely a big fan. I mean, I'm a Texans fan, but I always like watching the Chiefs. But I don't know if you saw the weather in Kansas City, but it's going to be pretty cold. I mean, cold for Texans, for Houstonians like me, like at 40 degrees at kickoff. So how do you kind of handle the cold weather as a field reporter? I mean, you probably stand there for hours on the field, and especially in the snow, because I know you're living in Denver. So how do you not really become an icicle on the field?
Yeah, that's a great point because I was quite the icicle last Saturday. I'll tell you that. We were out in the parking lot at Arrowhead, and there was like 40-mile-an-hour gusts. It was snowing. It was about 19 degrees, and snow was just drilling you from every side. And we were cold. We were really cold. I'm a big skier out here. You mentioned I live in Colorado, so I ski quite a bit. So I usually wear my skiing base layer underneath everything I'm wearing, right? Like ski tights underneath and top, and then a sweater and all those things, and just kind of layer up. I refuse with the hair though to ever rock a hat. I always got to look good. I don't want to wear a hat on TV. So I don't want to do that, which probably keeps me a little cooler. I should probably throw one on, but you're right. That's kind of the hard part, because it's funny. I've had this conversation with people that sing the national anthem pregame, right? Like I had this long conversation with Melissa Etheridge before a Chiefs playoff game last year. And she was singing the national anthem. It's keeping your face warm is the hardest part. So you can enunciate and say everything accurately. And I was freezing cold last weekend. And Melissa had given me some kind of things to do with your face. It probably looks weird if you're, in front of a camera doing it. But I had to say, it was a season-ending shoulder surgery for Juju Smith-Schuster. That is a tough sentence to say normally, but when your face is freezing, that's an even harder one, man, to do. So I do try to like keep my face as warm as possible, because that's what gets affected from you trying to talk to Rich Eisen and Kurt Warner and Michael Irvin, all those guys back in the studio that I talk to when I'm out in the field. So I try to layer up quite a bit, keep an eye on me. Maybe you can send me a message, tell me if I look cold or not, before, when I'm doing those hits on game day morning, Sunday in Kansas City.
Yeah, of course, man. And I've watched you on NFL Game Day Morning. I have a question about it. So, when Rich says, for example, now I'll go to Mike Garafolo in Philadelphia, so like when they go to you in Denver or in Kansas City. So how do you know really when to talk? Do you like hear something in an earpiece, or, how do you know when to speak?
That's a great question. So actually, I'm using one of them right now. This one here, this is what I'm hearing you through. Oh, it's my IFB. So I'm in kind of my setup right now, right, that I do all my TV at home. So I'll hear the producers of the show. We call him Giant, Andy Gregg, because he's a really, really tall guy. So everybody calls him Giant. Andy Gregg will get in my ear, hey, when Michael Irvin finishes his comment, Rich is going to come out to you next. He'll say that in my ear. So I'll know that's coming. I can't see anything. Sometimes you can see a return monitor, which means I can see what's going on the television. I don't see anything. I just have a camera. So I just stand there like an idiot looking at it for as long as possible. And then I start hearing Rich talk, and I know what's coming. So they give me little heads up of what's coming up and who I'm going to go to. Hey, remember, when, like I said, Irv finishes his comment, Rich is going to come to you, and then you're going to throw it out. You mentioned my man, Mikey G. So you're going to throw it out to Jeezy out in Philadelphia after this. So I get all that just as a reminder right before I go.
Yeah, so going to Bills versus Chiefs, what's kind of the latest that you've been hearing on the Chiefs running back situation? I know they used Jerick McKinnon. Jet was really amazing at 142 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. And I know you mentioned Darrell Williams didn't practice with a toe injury. So what about Clyde Edwards-Helaire? I know he's been a full participant. Do you foresee him taking a starting role?
Yeah, he is their starter, right? And they'd love to have him healthy, but he's missed, eight games now this season, if you include the playoffs, and that's been kind of his issue these first 2 years. And last week they thought the right shoulder was starting to get better. He injured it against the Steelers, missed the last 2 games of the regular season, and it just didn't respond last week the way they wanted it to. So they wanted him to get out there, get moving in practice this week, and then see how it responded after each one of these days. It looks like it's trending in the right direction, but Andy Reid said, hey, I thought last week he was going to go, and now I look like a liar. So they don't want to make any jumps on how these guys look. And Darrell Williams is the interesting one too, I think, because I was on the field next to him while their training staff was watching him work out pregame before the game last Sunday in the playoffs against the Steelers. And it was a really short workout, and he felt really good, and he gave the thumbs up and was like, yep, I'm good. And only played 8 snaps and thought the toe didn't really respond the way they thought. He's been really important to them, over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, filling in a lot of those games for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I think what you mentioned with McKinnon going for 142, and we're talking about the injuries to these other guys, I think what really we should focus on is that it doesn't really matter who's running the football. This offensive line is moving people downfield and opening up a lot of holes for these guys. And I think we saw that with Jerick going off, that like, they're a deep running back group, which helps in the playoffs. But at the same time, they have an offensive line that's really moving people, protecting Mahomes, and making this run game go.
Yeah, so you're mentioning that offensive line. I think that was something that really was mentioned a lot during the offseason. And Creed Humphrey, I know you've been talking about him. He was, I think, one of the highest rated centers this year. And then Trey Smith, who was drafted in the 6th round. The Chiefs also went and got Joe Thuney and Orlando Brown. And I think they really fixed that offensive line in just 1 year, which I think is very difficult to do. But to me, in that Bills versus Chiefs game, I think it may come down to the trenches, like which line is really going to take over the game, because the Bills, they have a defensive line that's definitely been improved. with Greg Rousseau, veterans like Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, and also guys like Ed Oliver. I mean, they're going to have to get pressure on Mahomes, something that I think they struggled with last season. And going back to their matchup in week 5, where the Bills won 38-20, Buffalo forced 4 turnovers in that game. So I think if the Bills kind of can get some pressure on Patrick, I think that would really favor Buffalo, because that Bills secondary to me is arguably the best in football. I think Mahomes may need to find some more time to find openings. You know, Micah Hyde, he had such a great interception last week.
Right?
Yeah, I know. And I think it's going to be one here. And same thing for the Bills, kind of holding back Melvin Ingram, Frank Clark, and Chris Jones. So do you think that's really going to be the key in that game?
It really is. And I think we go back to that week 5 game that you mentioned, like Chris Jones didn't play in that game. Frank Clark's battling a hamstring issue. They hadn't traded for Melvin Ingram yet. That's a completely different defensive line the Bills are going to face in this game than what they faced back in week 5. And I think you're right. That's a different group up front. I had a long conversation with linebacker Anthony Hitchens this week, kind of about that group up front and how they've been able to play so well. And I think that's going to be a key for this Chiefs defense, right? They're so aggressive. They want that D-line to keep coming at that offensive line to where the linebackers that are so athletic, and this was a trait that was lacking in Kansas City's linebacking group over the last couple of years, but now you see Willie Gay and you see, Hitch, and you see Nick Bolton, who led this team in tackles, get out in space and make plays. That really is important, right? When Josh Allen decides to run the football or tuck the football runner against Singletary, that they can get upfield in the open field and make some tackles. I think that's really important, and that plays off of the defensive line. And then you're right, this Bills defensive group up front specifically has the young guys that have contributed. They believe in Buffalo have really grown a lot this year, and that's helped fill some of the holes that they've had up front. But that Chiefs offensive line has been just, you're right. I think credit goes to general manager Brett Veach, just throwing all new 5 guys out there, and they've protected Mahomes brilliantly. It took time. It definitely took time for them to gel with him. I've talked to plenty of them about it, and because he plays the position differently. Pat runs forward a lot of times when he scrambles. He'll find a hole in the A gap and kind of run forward and then scramble out wide instead of always looping back out wide. He still does that, but he plays it a little bit differently. So I think it took a little while for that O-line to get used to him. And again, all games are won in the trenches, right? However you get the advantage as your D-line or O-line, I think this one is no different, because we know both these quarterbacks can play. So whichever one has more time to make things happen, and they can all make things happen too when they don't have time. So it's going to be a really, really, really fun one to be at.
Yeah, I mean, personally, right now, I'm thinking that the Chiefs might pull this one out 30-28. That's what my prediction is right now.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that Mahomes can figure out defenses now that he's facing the Bills for the second time. I think the Chiefs have adapted this year to where they take the underneath stuff, not just consistently going over the top. And Andy Reid, I'm sure he has some trick plays like last week. The Kelsey threw a touchdown pass. Nick Allegretti, I mean, he just threw TJ Watt to the ground. I mean, maybe he might use some of those plays and kind of maybe create something off of that. But really, for me, the big thing is I'm not really sure how this Chiefs defense might be able to stop Josh Allen, who's been on fire. The Bills, they've ripped the Patriots at the top 5 defense in the NFL with 7 straight touchdown drives. So I think the Chiefs may just have to outscore them. So, you think you might be able to give a prediction, or is that something you can't do because you're reporting on it?
Yeah, I don't know if I can give you an actual prediction, but you're right. I love watching Josh play the position, and I think I will give you this before we get to kind of like who I think. I can tell you who I think might win. Maybe I won't give you a score. but I think he's a perfect example of allowing your young quarterback to grow and grow each and every year. And we're so impatient. I remember talking to their general manager, Brandon Beane, about this a couple of years ago, where we're a society that isn't very patient for things. And they were patient with Josh Allen and letting him grow. There were so many concerns about, his accuracy issues. The Broncos were right down I-25 from the University of Wyoming and barely sent anybody to his pro day to go watch him throw. And there were concerns about the accuracy, and he just got better through his work ethic and through these years. And they helped him. And it's part of also his internal drive and the work he put in on his own. And I think that's now we're talking about him as being like one of the premier players in all of football, right? This is a matchup of the 2 highest paid players in all of football. in the postseason between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. And so I just think his growth has made, this league more fun, this conference more fun of the AFC. This is kind of the game that everybody maybe penciled in as maybe being the AFC Championship game again, right? But they meet each other in the divisional round. I do think the way that Josh Allen plays might be the X factor of this game. If he plays anything like he did last week, I don't know how Kansas City wins. I do think there's more of a consistency with Kansas City's offense over the second half of the season than there has been with the Bills' offense, which we've seen them play incredible like they did against the Patriots, but we've seen some lulls offensively as well, like against Jacksonville and some of the other snags that they've had. So I do think the way Allen plays is going to determine this. If he plays brilliant, I think the Bills win. He has a couple of mistakes. I think Kansas City wins. That's not really answering your question at all.
That's okay. I mean, that's the best you can do at this point. But it's definitely going to be a game of the week. I can't wait to watch it. And I know you worked here in Houston for 3 years, part of Comcast Sportsnet, covering the Houston Texans. So do you still come back down here to Houston to visit, or maybe what are some of your favorite things about Houston?
I love Houston. My son was born in Houston,
and
he was born over there at Women's, and and we love going back. My wife and my son don't get back nearly as much as I do for work, so I have to go back and I have to hit all my favorite restaurants. Like that's my number one favorite thing to do when I get to Houston. I got to hit Hay Merchant. I got to hit Georgia James. I got to hit. What else do I need to hit? Let me think. We used to live in Washington Heights. So Taco Laredo is a huge breakfast taco joint that I have to hit. So my number one thing is food in Houston. I think it is the best food city in America. And that is my favorite thing to come back and do. But I do still know so many people in the Texans building, being there every single day for 3 years, more or less living there at the end of the Gary Kubiak time into Bill's beginning of his tenure. And so I still love going into the building. There's still a ton of people there I really love seeing. But food, number one, food is the best part of going back to Houston.
Yeah, man, we definitely have a lot of cuisine down here for sure.
You got everything. You have everything. You got Tex-Mex. You got authentic Mex. You got barbecue. You got meat. Chinatown's awesome in Houston. Like everything is great. It is a food mecca. Ochi is another great spot that I love. That's in the Marriott downtown. It is. I love I'm giving all these plugs. Hopefully, I get some free gift cards sent back.
Maybe.
Like in terms of some food, right?
Yeah, it's great to see your love for Houston. And so, going to the Texans, I want to hear your thoughts on maybe the Texans coaching. I've seen that they've interviewed 4 guys right now: Brian Flores, Joe Lombardi, Hines Ward, and Jonathan Gannon. So, I would think at some point the Texans would be trying to interview Gerard Mayo, or maybe even guys like, who knows, Brian Dable or D'Amico Ryans, who's been a former linebacker for the Texans. So what are some names that you think the Texans are going to be looking to interview in the upcoming weeks?
You mentioned a couple of them, and they have a little bit of I don't want to say late start, but they didn't make their decision until the end of the week, right? And like you look at a team where I'm at in Denver, I'll just use them as an example. They let Vic Fangio go on Sunday morning. And that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Was it Thursday or Friday that they let David Culley go? It was Thursday, maybe. So that's like 5 days head start that the team like the Broncos have in terms of putting in their slips and things like that. So I would think some more names are going to come about with the Houston Texans. I think Flo is obviously a guy that has connections with Nick and maybe taking a deeper look at him. And they obviously know what he brings to the table. Gannon's an interesting name that's really, really hot, a young guy that in Philly that I think halfway through the season that maybe a lot of people thought he was going to get fired as a defensive coordinator and turns that defense around and plays really well, coaches really well the second half of the season. He's been a really hot candidate with a couple of these teams, but I don't think they're done interviewing. I do think there's some more that they'd like to, take a look at, but I think they do have an advantage if you look at their situation in a sense that they went through an interview process a year ago and still have a lot of fresh notes on a lot of guys that were just one season ago. And that's kind of a little bit of an advantage when you're kind of going through all these names.
Yeah. So do you think the Texans will be kind of leaning towards the guys, through the Patriots organization, Gerard Mayo and Brian Flores? Do you think they'd be leaning towards those? I mean, their connections to Caserio. And then also the Jack Easterby, I'm wondering, are some coaches trying to figure out what exactly is Jack Easterby's role in the Texans organization, whether they'd be actually considering the Texans. Do you think that guys like Flores and of Mayo, they would be more likely to join the Texans?
Yeah, I think the interview process really is, obviously you're getting interviewed, right? And you're trying to present your book and you're showing what you do as a leader and what you would do with that particular organization and how you go about your business and what you would do in your game plan. But it's also a dialogue in the sense you're curious what the organization is doing and how they're made up. You're curious what Nick and Jack's plan is, and you're asking Nick, what is Jack Easterby's exact role? If I come in here, how do we interact? How do we work together? And obviously some of those guys do have a familiarity with him from New England and know him a little bit through that. And I think that dialogue needs to be hammered out in the process. And that's why some of these things go down the way they go down, and they're lengthy, because you want to know much about the building as the building wants to know about you. And I think that's kind of how it goes about. And I think always that familiarity can always kind of come back and help you out in some capacity, because you've seen that guy operate when the bullets were flying, and you're in the middle of a season and everybody's exhausted, and they come through, and with some of those leadership qualities to push you through the dog days of the season. I mean, that's why I mentioned Gannon. Like, the Broncos are interested in him, but he goes way back with George Payton, their general manager, to their time with the Vikings. So I think having the familiarity with some guys and then seeing how they grew from when you were with them to now, because you maybe thought something in the past, like Nick Cassara could have been like, I know Mayo had this capability. Now I want to see where he's at now. And I think you have a better gauge of guys when you know that.
Yeah. So what would be kind of the latest that you've heard about the Deshaun Watson situation? I know GM Nick Cassara reported that Deshaun more than likely will not play for Houston again. And, this question that if Flores was hired, like, would Deshaun stay? Because, I mean, I heard that they've been communicating that Deshaun really wants to play for Brian Flores. So, I mean, is that even like a possibility at this point?
I don't know. I mean, this situation has been one that's been going forever. I know Nick said that in his interview with a couple of my good buddies, and Sean Pendergast and Seth Payne, who I'm good friends with down there in Houston, and usually try to see when I come into town. And I think Nick was pretty clear about where things stand. And you have to remember that obviously there was that tie to Miami in a trade that almost happened but ended up not happening. And obviously Brian Flores was the head coach there when that went down, and everything has to go through Deshaun waiving his no trade clause. But I think it's been reported pretty clearly that Deshaun's issues with the Texans organization go above where Nick is. And I think that to my understanding hasn't changed. So I think Nick's pretty accurate by saying that probably, that is accurate, that he's not going to play for the Texans again. It's been something that has continuously been a question on NFL Network, that it's almost like we keep every deadline and everything that happens, we always go, is something going to change, right? When the trade deadline was coming, is something going to change? Whether he's going to be on the 53-man roster, is something going to change in the spring? So these deadlines always push movement a lot of times, but there hasn't been very much movement outside of the things coming relatively close, I guess, in Miami up into the trade deadline. But again, he has a big say for where he goes. People are still going to figure it out, but a lot of people want to know how this thing legally figures itself out prior to making any sort of decision.
Yeah, so you mentioned Sean and Seth. I'm actually friends with those two as well. I was actually in the studio the other day.
Were you?
Yeah, it was before the Astros Game 6 World Series. We were previewing it in studio. So yeah, I'll tell them you said hi, by the way.
Yeah, they're the best, man. They are the best. I love those guys.
Yeah, Sean was one of the first people who actually kind of supported me, shared my story and stuff. So, yeah, you're right. They're definitely amazing guys out there.
Yeah, Sean's a big supporter of, I don't know if you know how he got his start. So I think he loves to kind of go out there. If anybody's going to go grind and put the work in, he's definitely going to support him in that sense. Are you a wrestling fan? Did he talk your ear off about wrestling?
I'm not really that much.
Because I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not into it that much right now.
He is.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Oh, big time.
I'll ask him about that, actually.
Yeah,
he loves it. Yeah, so what would be some advice you would give to, like me? I want to become a sportscaster someday, commentating on these games. And what would be some advice you would give? And how did you kind of get into this field reporting?
Be persistent. And I think you're already knocking that out of the park. I mean, just go and ask, right? A lot of times people don't understand. And I was talking to a class at USC last night, one of their broadcasting classes, about kind of a couple of these things that you just asked me. And there's so many opportunities now, and you're taking full advantage of it. When I started, I wish I would have had like, a YouTube channel or a podcast or some other avenue to go out there and get reps and get better. Right. And now that is at people's disposal, and people will just say, well, I'd like to do this. Well, and they're not going and doing anything about it. You are. And that's a big start. And I think getting the reps and getting the opportunities to just ask people questions and interview people and learn about how you can get things out of people, I think you have a jump start on that ahead of some other people. What I've learned is I lived everywhere. I was not, you can't be afraid to move, because that's going to happen as you try to climb the ladder in different areas and go to different parts of the country. And that's going to be probably part of your growth. And again, I think I just go back to reps. Like, that's the number one thing. You just keep doing it, and you're going to be better than everybody else who's just like, well, I'll go to college and then I'll start, right? Or then after college, we'll do this. I just think if you keep doing it and you stay persistent like you have been, that's already a leg up in a sense. And I think you just have to, I barely turned down any jobs. Anytime I worked at a TV station, like, hey, do you want to do this? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I said yes to everything. I was a camera operator and a phone assist operator, and I checked graphics. I was a producer. I was associate producer for Inside the NBA in Atlanta when I was doing stuff covering the SEC. And it was just saying like yes to everything, because I think the more you know about the business, the better. And I think that's a big part of it, because when you mentioned earlier, how do I know what's going on before Rich throws it to me, right? Or whatever. Having a background of putting a rundown together on how to build a show, and knowing all these things, and knowing that I can't just talk for 2 minutes if I want to. I'm supposed to talk for 40 seconds. I'm going to talk for 40 seconds because I know the producer's role of what they're trying to put together with the show. And I think you only get that from knowing all the other aspects of television. And I think the greater understanding you have of everybody else that's putting the product on the air, helping you do that, I think it makes you just a lot more plugged in and knowledgeable about what they're doing, and it helps you do your job a lot better, and you have an understanding for what everybody's doing. And I think the other part is everybody gets into this business wanting to do one specific thing, and I've had plenty of friends that thought they were going to do one thing, and then they fell in love with another aspect of television in the middle of it, and then did something different. So I think trying all of it is a big aspect of getting into this fun, crazy work all the holidays and weekends business.
Yeah, I know. I really appreciate that advice. I mean, that was great words right there. And thank you so much for all your support. And also, just to finish, I know you were very close with Demaryius Thomas for those years in Denver, and I was reading your article, and I was really just amazed at how great of a person that DT was. And it was just truly heartbreaking. But what would you say is something that you would want everyone to really remember about Demaryius?
It's not hidden his smile. I mean, that's one that everybody got to witness and see, whether you're watching, from home or you were in the stadium. You could probably see it from the sideline. You could see it from the stands. That's not one that I'd like. I mean, everybody already knows that one. I think the other one, and if you read the piece, is just the way he lit up when he interacted with kids. And
Yes.
there's a number of, charity events that I went to and watched him, and he just glowed when he was able to work with kids, probably specifically kids that maybe came from a rougher upbringing like he had, and giving them an opportunity to go out there and have some fun with some NFL players. He became a kid himself when he was in those kind of settings. And I think that's a sign of a really, really good person, specifically the way he treated teammates, kids, and things like that, and kids he didn't know in those settings. I think that shows you what kind of character he had and what type of love of life DT kind of had.
Yeah, I know. I really appreciate you sharing those, great stories about Demaryius. I was, really heartbroken about it. And, we remember Demaryius. He was down here in Houston for some time. So yeah, I mean, he was amazing, and prayers to his family. And, thank you so much, James, for really coming on here, doing my interview. I really appreciate it. And, your advice was very nice. Thank you.
No problem. So are you going to watch and make sure I stay warm on Sunday? Is that the plan
definitely.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay, send me something. Send me pointers. Even though you're not an expert on this staying warm thing down in Houston.
Yeah.
If I would needed to stay cool, I maybe hit you up.
Maybe.
Training camp was a bear down there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you think that once I post this interview, you can share it on your page?
You got it.
Yeah, of course. All right,
Sure.
James. Yeah, thank you so much for taking time out, and thank you. I hope I'll have you on the show again sometime.
Oh, I'd love to. I love the NFL Network backdrop stuff for
Yeah.
supporting the squad over at, us out here in LA, Denver, wherever we all live. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always have some picture on the screen over here. When I was doing K, then I had Good Morning Football on here, and then when I was
Nice.
doing JJ.
Okay, who all have you had on here? I know you had K. I know you had JJ. How did you get JJ, by the way? How did that go down?
Well,
Are you allowed to diverge?
I just sent him a message on Twitter saying I'd love to interview you. You're my favorite defensive player ever, and I just love to have the chance to talk to you. And just one day he just decided to reply, and it went on from there. So that was really amazing. I had Justin Reed on actually a couple of weeks ago talking about his future with the Texans and stuff. He was a really nice guy to have on. And I don't know if you saw this Colts ad here, but I had the opportunity to go meet Naheem Hines when the Colts came to town here. So I asked him like 3 questions for a quick interview actually on the field.
Sweet. He's a nice dude too.
Yeah, he's pretty good because he did support for the Muscular Dystrophy Association, something that I think is really important to me. And this time football, I interviewed Brandon Cooks of the Texans. So he gave me.
You got all the good people.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to interview Brandon. He was a lot of fun for sure. And that basketball there is Eric Gordon of the Rockets.
Mm-hmm.
The Rockets were able to let me meet him. I interviewed him as well. So yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun. And then really my first big interview was with Rich Eisen. I mean, I had Rich on. He was one of my first interviews. And I plan to bring Rich on again, I think, for the Super Bowl or something. That's
a good idea.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can help out in any way, but I think you're already too good at getting these interviews anyway. You don't need any help.
Yeah, and then this bat over here is Jose Altuve. So I got to meet Jose Altuve. So
yeah, great player. I think I saw that picture of you down in the first couple rows at the ballpark, right?
Oh yeah. I think that's my profile picture on Twitter right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's who I've been interviewing, and I just hope to keep going, just keep getting
crushing it, man. You're crushing it. Love it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, James.
Take it easy.
Yeah, you have a good evening.